For decades, Sean Diddy Combs was, well, really the picture of a hip-hop mogul, right? The guy behind this huge billion-dollar empire.
Absolutely. The name everyone knew.
But in the last few months, the headlines have just taken this incredibly unsettling turn. It's painting a really, really different picture of someone we thought we knew. What, for you, is the most jarring part of this whole shift?
I think it's the sheer contrast. You know, publicly it was all about the music, the fashion, Sarah, just massive success, untouchable almost. But these recent revelations, especially, coming out of the lawsuits and the federal investigations, it feels like there was this whole hidden world operating underneath it all.
Right.
And our mission today, really, in this deep dive, is to get past just the breaking news alerts.
Yeah.
We want to try and peel back those layers, connect some dots between everything that's been reported, and really try to understand the power dynamics that were at play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This deep dive isn't just like reporting another celebrity scandal. It's bigger. It's about power, these allegations of corruption, and honestly, the really uncomfortable question of who gets protected in the music industry and why. So we're going to trace this journey, right, from his, frankly, super fast rise, building this empire.
Yeah, meteor.
And then dive into that huge lawsuit that really seemed to change everything. We'll track the domino effect with the federal investigations, and then confront this kind of baffling silence from inside the industry itself.
Sounds like a plan. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's rewind. Way back, 1987, John Combs, he starts as an intern at Uptown Records.
Right, under Andre Harrell. Well, he's still at Howard University, actually.
Still in college. And then boom, by 1993, he's only 23, and he launches Bad Boy Records. I mean, that's an incredibly fast climb.
It is. And what's really striking isn't just the speed, but the immediate impact he had. His first big signing, the notorious B.I.G. And that wasn't just, a record deal. That was the birth of something massive culturally. It pretty much instantly put Bad Boy on the map. But even as that legend was being built, our sources suggest there might have been, let's say, a darker pattern emerging pretty early on.
And that's where it gets really interesting and maybe disturbing. Think about this timeline. As early as 1994, there are these alleged involvements in Judici's manager getting beaten up.
Right, those reports surfaced.
Then after Biggie's tragic murder in 97, all those rumors that just wouldn't go away.
Persistent whispers, yeah.
And then who could forget 1999, the Club New York shooting incident, Diddy and J-Lo, that whole escape situation.
Very public, very messy.
And then by 2001, a former security guard files a lawsuit claiming assault. So how did these incidents maybe seemingly separate back then? How do they start to lay the groundwork for the kind of maybe unchecked power we're hearing about now?
Well, when you look at them together, they do suggest potentially a consistent pattern. Alleged aggression, a certain power dynamic being cemented really early. It kind of reinforces what Mark Curry, the former Bad Boy artist, told us. He said, people don't understand Bad Boy wasn't just a label. It was a system. And Puff was the godfather.
Wow. The Godfather.
Yeah, that quote really shines a light, doesn't it? It suggests this power structure was solid from the start. Influence, control. It went way beyond just making music. It might have created an environment where certain actions were maybe overlooked or even enabled.
Okay, let's jump forward then. November 16th, 2023. That's the date the singer Cassie Ventura filed her lawsuit. It was, 35 pages?
That's right.
And you really can say that date just changed everything for Sean Combs. It was like a bomb went off publicly.
It really was a bombshell. And I think it raised a huge question for a lot of people. What exactly was in that lawsuit that made it so pivotal?
What were the specifics?
The claims are, frankly, deeply disturbing. We're talking allegations of years of physical abuse, including broken bones. There were claims of forced sex trafficking involving male prostitutes, allegations of revenge porn distribution supposedly sent to industry executives.
Unbelievable.
And maybe one of the most chilling parts was the allegation related to Kid Cudi and a car bombing incident. It just detailed a level of alleged control and abuse that was, impossible for anyone to just brush aside.
And then what really hammered home the seriousness, I think, for a lot of observers was how fast it settled.
Exactly. Within 24 hours.
That lawsuit was settled literally within a day. The legal analysis we've seen basically says the speed of the settlement suggests Combs knew this could end him.
Can you unpack that a bit? Why is that speed so significant? What does it really indicate?
From a legal standpoint, settling that fast is a massive red flag. It almost always suggests the defendant is desperate, absolutely desperate, to avoid the discovery phase of a lawsuit.
Discovery. That's where they had to hand over evidence.
Precisely. Internal documents, emails, text communications, witness testimonies under oath. All of that could potentially be compelled.
So a super fast settlement like that, it's a very effective way to slam the door shut, to stop that information from ever becoming public record or being scrutinized in court. It signals pretty strongly a fear of what might come out if the case moved forward.
And that urgency, that seeming need to just contain the damage, it didn't stop with Cassie's case, did it?
No, not at all.
It was like pulling one thread and suddenly the whole thing starts to unravel.
That's a good way to put it. Within weeks of Cassie's lawsuit settling, boom, 7 more accusers came forward. It created this rapid domino effect.
7 more?
Yeah, and that cascade of allegations seems to have led directly to the feds getting involved.
Which brings us to March 25th, 2024. These dramatic raids by Homeland Security.
Yeah, hitting his mansions in Holmby Hills, LA, and also in Miami.
This wasn't just a couple of agents knocking on the door, was it?
No, this looked serious, full-scale raids. And our sources were reporting what they were specifically looking for.
Which?
Things like digital evidence of sex trafficking, financial records potentially showing alleged payments, and, interestingly, communications with other industry figures.
Wow, so that really highlights how serious the federal angle is here. They're looking for specific evidence of really grave crimes.
Exactly. It signals a clear shift from civil suits, however damaging, into the potential realm of serious federal criminal charges.
Now, amidst all this, the lawsuits, the federal raids, there's something else that's, well, frankly, quite disturbing when you look at the whole picture.
What's that?
It's the silence. The almost deafening silence from the absolute top tier of hip-hop. You know, figures like Jay-Z, Beyoncé, Drake.
Yeah.
Reports say they've basically been avoiding any questions about Diddy. What does that silence tell you?
That silence is deafening, isn't it? It's very noticeable. We actually heard from 3 different industry insiders, and they all basically said the same thing, almost word for word. Everyone knows, but no one can talk.
Everyone knows, but no one can talk. That's chilling.
It is. It suggests this pervasive culture of maybe fear, or perhaps deep-seated complicity. It implies there's some kind of protective mechanism built into the industry itself, like an unspoken rule, a collective agreement, maybe for various reasons, that stops people at the top from speaking out, even now.
It sounds like what that anonymous insider told us. They put it very bluntly. There's a reason you haven't heard Meek Mill or Rick Ross dissing Diddy lately. The machine protects its own. What does that actually mean in practice when the machine protects its own in this industry? And what does that imply about accountability?
Well, when people talk about the machine protecting its own, it suggests this really complex web. Power, influence, money, maybe mutual favors or dependencies. It's all tangled together.
Right.
It implies that certain figures are seen as too big, too valuable, maybe too connected for the system to just let them fall without a fight. Or maybe their fall would implicate too many others. And that kind of dynamic raises huge questions about accountability, doesn't it? If the machine steps in to protect its own, how can you ever really get true justice or transparency within that system?
It seems like a massive barrier.
It really does. A barrier to holding powerful people accountable when so many others might have benefited from their reign or might be caught in the fallout. It really shows how tightly personal power can get woven into the very fabric of an industry.
So, with everything that's happening, the lawsuits, the raids, the potential for charges, this industry's silence, what does this all actually mean for Diddy's future? Our sources laid out 3 possible scenarios, kind of potential paths forward.
Right, ways this could potentially play out.
The first one they mentioned was called the Epstein scenario. What does that entail?
Okay, so the Epstein scenario, to be clear, isn't just about Diddy facing charges himself. It implies something broader. It suggests the federal investigations could potentially uncover a whole network. Enablers, co-conspirators, maybe leading to a much wider systemic collapse that goes way beyond just one person.
So dismantling the whole infrastructure?
Potentially, yeah. That's the implication. Then you've got the Weinstein scenario.
Okay, what's that one?
That one suggests he might manage to avoid actual prison time, maybe through deals or legal maneuvers, but the civil lawsuits would just keep coming. They'd relentlessly drain his empire.
So financial ruin, but maybe not jail?
Possibly. It highlights how civil cases, while impactful financially, don't always lead to criminal conviction or incarceration.
And the third one.
That's the Cosby scenario, which posits more of a temporary fall, a huge hit to his reputation, public exile for a while. but then maybe, eventually, a quiet comeback down the line. This one forces us to think about public memory, forgiveness, how culture sometimes allows figures to reemerge even after major scandals. It's a frustrating possibility for many, but one the sources noted.
But hanging over all of these scenarios, there's this potential game changer, right? The wild card they mentioned.
Yes, the offshore accounts.
Diddy's alleged connections to offshore accounts. Why are those potentially such a big deal? How could freezing them change everything?
Okay, so when we talk offshore accounts, we basically mean money held in banks outside the US, often in places with really strict banking secrecy laws. It's harder for US authorities to track and access.
Right.
Now, if, and it's a big if, investigators could track those accounts and find grounds to get them frozen, well, that could cut Diddy off from a potentially huge chunk of his wealth.
Cripple it.
It could absolutely cripple his ability to fund his likely astronomical legal defenses. It could stop him from paying future settlements or even just maintaining his global business operations and lifestyle. It would drastically limit his options and make surviving something like the Weinstein scenario or staging a Cosby scenario comeback much, much harder if his financial lifeline is severed.
Wow. Okay, so stepping back from the details for a moment. This deep dive into everything surrounding Sean Combs. It really feels like more than just celebrity gossip, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's this intersection, this collision point between true crime and music history.
Yeah.
And it has these really profound implications, I think, for anyone who pays attention to culture, power, and the industries that shape them.
It really forces you, the listener, to look past the shiny surface, past the headlines, and really think about the hidden structures, the unspoken rules that operate inside these incredibly powerful industries.
Definitely. The story of Sean Combs, at least as it's unfolding through these sources we've looked at, it's just a stark reminder that what we see, the public image, often masks a completely different reality underneath.
So as you think about everything we've talked through today, maybe just mull this over. What are these events, these allegations, this silence, what does it all really reveal about the systems? The systems that allow certain people to gather so much power and maybe operate with impunity for so long.
Yeah, and what does it actually mean for the machine to protect its own?
Exactly. And how might those same patterns, those same dynamics of power and protection echo not just in music, but in other powerful industries, other parts of our world? It's definitely something worth thinking about.